Yeah, sorry, I distracted everybody as per usual. See, this is why you shouldn't have me at these things, because I'll always keep talking and like nothing will get done.
That's okay, Magda. That's why people love you. So it's all right.
Oh, is that what it is? Hi, everyone. Good to see everybody today in spirit. Um, so we're starting right on time today. So I will shoot the breeze for 30 seconds to allow all you lovely people to come in. And then I have a bit of an announcement to make, other than my hair is clean, which is a big deal for me. Hi, everyone. Let us know where you're coming from. Let us know.
Is this
How amazing
announcement
you are.
related to your cell phone?
Oh my gosh, my cell phone. I'm going to post
Good
about this on
reminder
social
of
media
that.
because my phone started leaking gases. I have a new phone now.
Okay.
But yeah, my old one was special. It the battery swelled up and yeah.
It
Like
almost blew up.
I went to the fire station. I'm like, hey guys, Apple wants me to mail this. I don't think I should mail it. They're like, yeah, no, you should not be mailing this.
No.
Anyway. Okay, so people are here, which is great. Others will trickle in, but I have an announcement for all of you who are here. Actually, an important one for once. So we have changed again how we're going to issue CCEU credits because people just don't follow directions sometimes. Others forget, etc. So we're trying to make life easier. So what's going to happen for the next few webinars until we are sure that the process is working correctly, what we'll do is we're going to look at the report of all the attendees after the webinar. So if you are here, you need to be here for the whole webinar because we know the report will show us when you joined, how long you stayed, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to use that report to generate CCE certificates automatically. So tomorrow, what you will get for attending today, you will get an email from Coach Arya, and that email will have the subject of today's webinar. And in the email is going to ask you to click to claim your CCEU. You have to do that in order to get a certificate. If you don't do it, there will be no certificate. But the easy part is there's no password to remember, nothing like that. So you'll click the link that's going to be in the email that you receive tomorrow. And that will prompt you to log into our online learning portal. So most of you already have your login details. If you don't, then you'll set them up there. But you'll click, you will be taken to the learning portal, and there'll be a question prompt, something around what you learned today. Answer the question prompt. Again, no password there. And once you do that, you will see your lovely certificate. And that's it. And you can download it or you can just leave it because it will live forever on the learning portal. But point is, please be here and please stay for the whole webinar. If you don't, then you will not get your certificate. So this will be the process for the next few webinars. And if all goes well, it will be the process from now on. So tomorrow, please look out for that email and make sure that you click. Okay, over to the gentleman. Start your
Thanks,
engines.
Magda. Thank you. Yeah, Magda would be staying with us for a while and then leave. Yeah, Ujjaval and I would be with you through the day for you. One of the things that we thought we would do is, this being the last session of the year, make it a little different. Not just us talking as panelists or one person talking to you guys and have you involved in this. And the process I'm going to do is something that we have been practicing in some of our coach training classes for the last couple of years, Cindy and I, and many of our trainers, including Ujjaval, are doing that too, where we are trying to integrate coach training with actual coaching, as well as self-coaching practice. And we found this pays multiple dividends. In fact, some of the people who had approached me to be coached, I had induced them, persuaded them to come and join a coach training program. Where do you want to buy a fish? Why don't you learn to fish, for instance? And so I see that this process has got tremendous potential for many of you as well as individual coaches in terms of coaching people, and at the same time enhancing one's own self-awareness. And as many of you know, ICF, after 25 years, added a new competency, the coaching mindset, which is probably, to my mind, the most important change that ICF has had in recent times in terms of the coaching competencies, something which could have been done earlier, but at least it's been done now. It's an amazing sort of recognition of the fact that the coaching process starts with the self-awareness of the coach. Without the coach being aware, without the coach having shared their own baggages as well, the conditioned baggages, there isn't going to be any possibility of coaching anybody else. Unless you have self-awareness yourself of the highest level, it's impossible to create that awareness in other people, which is what we are supposed to do in coaching. So what we are going to do today is to practice that a little bit in terms of our own experiences, what has happened this year, given this year has been one of, for many people, a lot of stress, for some perhaps a lot of learning and awareness, a lot of new normal being introduced to replace what used to be the normal before. So to start with, so there will be a series of questions that we would be posing you, and some of it Ujjaval and I would be discussing amongst ourselves as well. But we would like you to sort of post on the chat as succinctly as possible the answers to those questions. The first background to this, before we ask you the questions, would be that we would like you to reflect through the experiences that you had in the last year. A year which probably signifies, embodies the whole concept of what's called the VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. In terms of totally unanticipated change, accelerating change, and something, an unseen, invisible organism has been able to sort of challenge the might of what humanity thought was its right. So what I would like you to do is this: just reflect through the year as to various experiences that you have been through. And then I will put down questions and we'll proceed based on what you answer. We can go deeper into some of them to understand what is unique. Magda has suggested, why don't we use something like the Mentimeter and stuff, so you answer in one word answers, and then you put them up and see what comes up as a common answer. I didn't want to do it for this reason, that I do believe that each of our truths is very unique. Each of our experiences is very unique. And so each one of us has to deal with what's happening to us in our own way. And that's what coaching is about. It's not about offering a generic solution to multiple problems, but it is about each one of us being able to understand what we are going through. So as you reflect through your last year's experiences, I would like you to become aware of what you're feeling in your body as your sensations. As you think about something, kind of experiences, let's say, for instance, some of you have had unfortunate experience of having been in a hospital. Some loved one has been in a hospital. Something else has happened. And as you think about it, what's happening to you in a particular part of your body in terms of your body sensation. And what's the emotion that is coming up for you, and what are the thoughts associated with it. So I just would like all of you to briefly think about, as a quick rewind of this year, from probably the beginning of the year, or probably from March when we have had this pandemic experience to now. And in this process, maybe there are certain things which are much more resonating for you or dissonating for you. And at the end of it, after you have thought through it, and I don't want you to hurry, I would like you to take some time to do that. Just answer this question. How have you been impacted by what you experienced during this year? I could have asked you, how did these experiences impact you? But I'm asking it you in a different fashion. How have you been impacted? I would like you to be there at the center stage. And what has happened to you has happened because of who you are, not because of what those experiences have been. Another person who has been going through the same experiences would have been probably impacted in a different way. But you were impacted in a very unique way. So it could be a sentence, it could be more than one sentence. So I would like you to put down this question, this answer to this question. How have you been impacted by your experiences of this year?
And I
So
would
let's wait
request,
for,
yes, I would request when you are posting your responses, select all panelists and all attendees, not only to the panelists. So let everybody see what you are going through. And we thank you for making that choice.
it's not about your learning. We will come to that part later. Payal has answered, make me wiser. What I would like you to express here, like Hayden has said, experience much anxiety and uncertainty. Yeah, leave the risk for the moment, more grounded. That's a learning. We'll come to that. At this point in time, I would like to just focus on how have you been impacted? What's happened to you? From a body sensation, from a physical, somatic experience, from an emotional experience. What is that has happened to you? And of course, it's up to you to put down whatever you want as a client. I'm playing the coach now. So let me ask Ujjaval that question. How have you been impacted, Ujjaval?
Yeah, Ram, thanks. I think I'm resonating what Ram Charan has responded in the chat, but my response is slightly different, almost on the same line. That I felt initially little taken aback, impacted, little scared, anxious, but then somehow I mean, as a student of systems thinking, started realizing that it is something profound happening around us. What is it that is an opportunity for me here? And then somehow I thought that this could be a good opportunity for the reset and renewal. Perhaps nature is wanting us to do that way. And the moment that reframing of perspective has happened and my perspective changed, then I believe I'm truly in the sense of astonishment how the year went by. And as Ram, what we have learned about validation and invalidation. So Time Magazine, in recent issue, they used their cover page as 2020 and a quick, a big, cross put on 2020. But I believe that it will not be a good idea to completely invalidate the year 2020, howsoever we have been impacted. But 2020 does have some lesson. I'm sure you are going to cover it going forward.
So, Ujjaval, yeah, based on whatever you said, if you were to bring up some of those, let's say, more powerful, deeper experiences,
Hmm.
how does your body react to it? What is your somatic experience as you rewind and position yourself at that point in time of that experience?
Hmm. If I go back to that time, say somewhere in the month of March, mid March, where all these things began in India, I believe I felt a tightness in my chest, as well as very like shrugging of shoulders, as if the threat perception is looming large on me. That kind of bodily sensation that I had.
Okay. And as a result of, like you said, this tightening, this bodily sensation, so what were the overwhelming emotions that came up for you?
Yeah, I think deeply scared and very very concerned with the uncertainty it was offering, and the more it was unpredictable, maybe we maximize the threat. So deeply fearful, deeply concerned about the health and well-being and overall the state of life. What would that be? Of course, there was a big scare about the financial impact as well. So all these emotions flowing through.
Yeah, so Ujjwal, many of the people here too, I mean, we are talking about something similar about fear, about anxiety, and so on. And you also added the fact it was one about the health, about the wellness, welfare, but
Yeah.
also it was about the fear of the financial aspect of it as well.
Mm.
So, where did that insecurity come from? What was that fear about?
Um, so I guess, it was a fear of loss, and somehow I could also then later, relate it to anticipatory grief, as I felt that whatever savings that we had might get lost forever. The future earning potential also might get compromised. So somewhere I was traveling through the Kubler-Ross grief cycle and anticipating the loss of the future, and also non-fulfillment of dreams. So that was the scare, perhaps.
Okay, so it is partly a loss of what you have,
Hmm.
and partly also an opportunity loss in terms of my expectations, which I have
Yes,
aspirations that may not be fulfilled,
that's
and
right.
probably at some level about the fear of the completely unknown, as to you really don't know what the heck
Yeah.
is going to happen, and therefore there's a fear and an anxiety, and arising out of that, there are multiple things which are going to happen, which is probably true of any change. But in this particular case, the change has been so drastic. And it's also something which is not merely about, let's say, an emotional attack or a financial attack, but it's much more an attack on your life as well. And so,
Sure.
what's happening? So, we are not looking at any solutions out here, but I
Hmm.
want all of you to think through this as to whatever that you are experiencing, what is it, whatever that you are seeing as having impacted you, if you can, while you have this chat, and we will try and preserve it and send it across to you, maybe jot down your thoughts for yourself. And later, what we suggest to all those people with whom we are working is to journal and reflect as to where the emotion and the sensations and the thoughts of this impact are coming from. Where do they originate? And this is extremely important. And I think it's both in terms of our own self coaching as well as our ability to coach other people. And I may have talked about this before in the Vedic scriptures. The learning process is described as, in Sanskrit, it's called Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. It's about the sensing by multiple means. It could be about reading, it could be viewing, it could be experiencing, it could be having gone through that process as we have all done in the last 1 year. That is called the Shravana, which means hearing technically, but it's about all sensing. And the Manana is about the reflection, to try and understand what those sensory perceptions mean to us. Where do they come from? What is the origin? What is it that is creating the fear in me? Either about my life, about my future, or the present of what I have, my loss of current wealth or anything else that I have, or even what I would be able to acquire in the future. And finally, what is the nididhyasana in terms of once you reflect through it and then find out, understand what this is there some way that I could be prepared the next time around, whether this change or anything worse, would I be able to keep myself ready with the awareness that I have had in terms of what I have gone through. So I just would leave it as a thought at this point in time and move on, and we'll come back and address some of these depending upon what are the questions that you may have. The second question that I have is that what impacted you and that what experienced you and that what created whatever emotions and sensations within you, in what way did that impact your interpersonal relationship with other people? What happened? The first question was about your intrapersonal responses, sensations, emotions, and thoughts. The second question is about interpersonally in terms of your interactions with people. How did this manifest itself? And what is it that you experienced? Whatever comes up for you, if you could just put it down. I mean, I will also engage in a conversation with Ujjaval, trying to understand what he went through. Would you like to just see this, what comes up, and then
Sure.
some of it is great. Kanan says it was different with different people. Mixed experience of sharing a closer bond with some and far more distance with others. Paula says, I wanted to hold space for others as a mom, wife, friend, and daughter, kicked into caretaking mode, more empathetic, available, and listening. The longer remained on my own at home, more reluctant I was actually to go out and engage with people. I think different people have been affected in different ways. If it's not everybody who became more empathetic, I'm very sure, because I've been meeting and talking to many people. The responses have been very different. And of course, each one of you has had your own. So Ujjwal, what was it that you experienced when you, in what way, the impact that this year had on you?
Mm.
How did it impact your behavior, your interaction with other people?
Yeah, Ram. I guess I became more inward focused because as it was almost kind of a cutoff from the outside world. As pre-pandemic, I used to travel perhaps out of 1 month, 30 days. I used to travel almost 25 days, and then started staying at home for the whole time. So got to meet my family, perhaps a lot of renewal in relationship. Initially, frankly speaking, even my wife also said that they were a little worried that how this person will adjust and how they will adjust with me. But I guess then it was that self renewal really helped. And now there is a situation that a couple of clients wanted me to travel, and I am of the opinion that now I don't want to travel. It was complete going. The pendulum has gone onto another spectrum, rather at the other end of the spectrum, and a lot of deepening of relationships of friends, families, and professional relationships. Went little distant.
Yeah, thanks, Ujjaval.
Most
Like some
welcome.
of the answers out here, like Don says, I was impatient. Um, what is that now? I'm trying to figure out. Lost my temper very quickly. And she then says, now I'm in a different space. Manish had drew me much closer to near and dear ones, made me reconnect with many people that I had lost touch with. Connected with myself, Bala says, I connected with myself more, became calmer, centered, and focused. But let me also share some of the experiences that I had. In a sense, perhaps sharing something, I'm just at this point in time being vulnerable with you. Between the two of us, myself and my wife, I'm much more extroverted, outgoing. My wife is very much more introverted. And during this period, one of the things that we discovered was I didn't really miss going out at all. I was very comfortable doing whatever I needed to do, uh, either on Zoom or whatever that I had to do for myself, and still be able to do pretty much whatever that needed to be done. Fortunately, we had established ourselves as a fairly virtual kind of organization. That was one part of it. My wife, who's normally a pretty much introverted kind of person, she is not the kind of person who's tremendously sociable. She felt that not being able to go out limited her freedom. And therefore, there was a, let's say, an urge, as it were, that she had to go out from time to time. I mean, initially, at least in the city of Bangalore where we are, there was quite a bit of restrictions in terms of how you can go to public places, maybe just for shopping and stuff like that. But even to the extent of, for instance, when we had an option to do something which we could have done without needing to travel, we decided finally last month to, or early this month, to take a flight to another city to get something done and stay there for a couple of days and come back. And after having come back, yes, we did have some bit of a scare because of certain things, and but still, we felt it was worth it. So it was not exactly the same for different people. People reacted in different ways. Some people became more withdrawn. Some people became more, as you say, found deeper connects and so on. Again, this is something that you might like to think about as to if you were used to behaving in a particular way, like Don says here, I'm an impatient person and I change into another space, and some of you others have talked about something similar. What is it that is happening in you that is at one level creating these different sensations and emotions and so on and so forth, fear, the anxiety, the losses, opportunities, and current losses of whatever you are having currently. And then also in terms of how you do interact with others. And it may be possible that not all of us would like to completely open up and say, look, there's a period of time where maybe I felt I was going to lose out a lot. So why the hell do I want to help other people? I would like to take care of myself. It's quite possible. And it would have been quite normal as well. Maybe that's not something that we would like to come out openly and say. There could be multiple ways of how this has affected us in terms of how we have intrapersonally experienced it and interpersonally experienced it. And some of you who may be familiar with psychometrics and so on, in some of those tests, there are two factors which seemingly very similar, which used to, in the beginning, confuse me quite a bit. One was called sociability, another one is called interpersonal sensitivity. The sociability factor is about when you are dealing with multiple people, how maybe seemingly extroverted you are, and so on. And the interpersonal sensitivity is about how do you relate to people on a one-on-one basis. Generally, if you look at it very superficially, these both seem to be highly correlated, that if you are highly sociable, you may think that I would be highly interpersonally sensitive as well. But if you go deeper into it, you'll find that these are completely different. I could be extremely sociable. I could be the life and soul of a party, but I'm not the kind of person who could empathize and develop a powerful connect with an individual person, and vice versa. So many of these kind of what might seemingly paradoxes in terms of our behavior, those might be coming up. And then certain things, which is what usually psychometrics are used for, that our behavior changes at times of stress. And if you are able to know about these ahead of time, that could save us a lot of grief in future as well. Because these are things which don't affect you. These are the blind spots, as it were, which may not necessarily affect you deeply in the normalcy of things. But when you're subjected to stress and pressure, as we all have been in the last 1 year, we need to be far more careful about these aspects of us, which might, combination of certain behavior patterns. If I'm a kind of person who is highly ambitious, and I'm also the kind of person who would like to control, and in a situation like this, where I have very little control about what's going to happen to me, or anybody else for that matter. And that really sort of makes a huge difference in the way that I'm likely to react and respond. So some of these things which you might think about. So we're just looking at it at this point in time to give you an idea about what you can possibly do in terms of asking yourself these questions. At this point in time, I'm asking you to look at the last year's experience to do that. But if you make it a regular practice, and later I will go into a little bit more of the philosophical background to this, on almost a daily basis, if I go through, and which I now have made a regular practice for myself, though I don't actually physically write down, what's happened during the day, and in what way has it impacted me? And in addition to how I have been impacted, how it sort of made me impact other people in terms of my relationships. So if you're able to do it on a regular basis, we will go through the rest of it to try and see how it makes sense for you. And I would like at the end of it for you to respond to in what way perhaps it may have helped you to sort of use this in a way to create a difference for yourself. The first two questions were, based on the experiences of last year, how have you been impacted? The second one is, how did you impact others? The next question is, what did you learn, therefore, about yourself? Many of you have already answered this, but if you were to think through this a little bit in terms of what we have now discussed. Like Don says, I used to be impatient, now I'm in a different space. So what's that? What has changed? And what is that particular trigger which has caused this change? Where is that shift coming from? What is an awareness that has created that shift. Think about it a bit. So would you like to talk about a little bit about, based on what you've said so far,
Yeah,
the
sure.
fears that you had in terms of your uncertainties and so on, and then the tightness and the way that you've been interacting with other people as well. So
Yes.
what are you learning about yourself as a result of all this?
Yeah. So Ram, what I learned about that after being pushed to the wall and then realized that I'm a big fan of the teachings of Dr. Viktor Frankl. So I realized that why am I not thinking that I have a choice? So whatever has been impact on me, but I can influence my future, and that 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 shift has then accelerated and expanded only over the year, and then being aware that what you are going through and you still have a choice, so that made me believe in recreating the future, or repausing the faith in the future. And from there on, the life has been quite beautiful. And also, just adding one more perspective, that I thought that um, if I can reframe my perspective, if I can do that, then immediately the empathetic self in me told me that, so how can you help others recover quickly? So I use the theme of reset and renewal, and along with the fellow coach Mugdha, try to create everyday people how they can learn about self coaching, and then they coach others. Created a small model and created a small program around that, and that was well received. So yeah.
There's one thing I want to explore a little bit about what you said just now, and I would like the others in the audience also to reflect on that. And those of you, please check your default setting. If it's still on panelists, try and change it to panelists and attendees. Some of you are still addressing only the panelists and not the attendees as well. There are two things. One is, you sort of implied, though you didn't say it in as many words, and I said it, that in this particular situation, the feeling of anxiety, loss, fear, and all that is because we are not able to control
Hmm.
what's going on.
Hmm.
But in spite of it, you felt that you now feel stronger about the ability to make your own choices and
Yeah.
how they influence your life in future.
Hmm.
So how do you reconcile these two? On the one level, not having control,
Hmm.
a minuscule invisible virus is going to change our lives in many ways,
Yeah.
including taking away our lives perhaps.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I have a choice. Can you try and reconcile these two?
Sure. Ram, I can, as you ask me this question, and when I'm reflecting back and going back into that time and space, I think uh, what made that shift was one thing, which is not confronting with the invisible enemy, and accepting the situation as is, and accepting your fears also. I mean, my own fears, my own anxieties, and not even going through the wrestling or struggle in between. The moment there was a acceptance, initially it was hard, resistance, gradually converting into acceptance, so denial, resistance, and then acceptance. So that acceptance made everything easy. So perhaps, as we asked the question in CC 2.4, that what is standing in the way for you to reach where you want to reach, perhaps the acceptance was the defining factor.
That's truly amazing, Ujjwal. So I just want all of you in the audience to just think about it for a moment. Normally, when we feel that we do not have control, we do not have a control to define our own lives, our future, our monetary status, power, etc. Where you tend to go is down in the Maslow's hierarchical levels. You feel invalidated cognitively, emotionally, you start worrying about your future, about your safety, and finally, even of survival. Whereas like Ujjaval says, and many of you who are responding to this, if you look at it that way, you are actually moving into the higher level of level 5 of Maslow's, if you were to put it that way, in terms of the self-actualization of about helping other people, people who may not be as good a state as you are in. Some of you have talked about a sense of gratitude, unconditional positive regard, and many such things. So actually the reverse is happening. In a normal stressful situation, where generally people feel that they are not in control, the logical movement is downwards, whereas here the movement is upwards. There are good reasons why it is. But we need to understand what is it that is making this shift. Like Ujjaval says, one of it is certainly an acceptance. The acceptance of the fact that I am not really in control, and I accept that. And as a result of that acceptance, I'm able to view myself and my environment differently. So I would like you just to think a little bit about that. That in fact, even in these times of being in situations where we feel very little is in our control, we seem to have choices that we can exercise. We can behave in ways that helps us and helps other people. And this arises of multiplicity of factors of acceptance, gratitude, perhaps compassion, all that kind of a stuff. So what really is happening within us? And these are wonderful things to happen despite whatever we are facing. So the next question to me is, so this is what you learned about yourself. This is how you were doing it. And the next one is a bit of a loaded question, and I would like to really probe a little deeper. What is it that you learned about other people in terms of how they were behaving or they were behaving towards you? Would you like to
Sure.
talk about that a bit?
Yeah, sure. So Ram, I guess it was as you asked me this question, I was image of rainbow was coming up in my mind as many people perhaps on expected lines they behaved. Many people did not behave on the expected lines. Some of them kind of ditched at the last moment. All of that stuff happened, and then that also caused, as I reflect back, that also caused different emotions in me. But somehow, I felt that in this year my response, if I may say, that I guess that so this year is of asylum. So anybody who is in asylum needs to be forgiven. That's kind of a thing. So I felt that we are into nature's asylum this year. So if it's a nature's fury, so we should be more forgiving and forgetting. So that kind of a stuff, it was initially difficult to not have a measured response to it, but then I have made a uniform policy that be accommodative, don't be reactive, allow the restraint to prevail. And then I felt that as those 2 or 3 months of lockdown and everything passed away, their behaviors became, again as normal as it used to be.
So, Ujjwal, then what happens now when you have seen people behave differently from what they were before? In a
Hmm.
sense, you start discovering who your friends are and who your
Hmm.
friends are not.
Yeah.
So this may be a good time for you to figure that out. Was
Yes.
that something that happened for you?
Yes, it did. It did. I reconciled the relationships, reordered my own priorities and choices about how I would, keep them in the priority list or not. And that also, I think, a natural response to their behaviors. But then I realized that, okay, so I will not be vocal, but I'll hold my responses in private and still try and nice to be them in public. It is little inauthentic for me to manage, but still, I guess, in overall situation, because we are still not out of the woods as far as the coronavirus is concerned, so just trying to stay patient. It's difficult to self-regulate at times, but I guess it might help in the longer run.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I mean, we came across people like there was this young man in our neighborhood. He was organizing camps in terms of getting people tested, and I thought he was part of the government health work system, whatever it is. And so, and so my wife and I, we sort of reached out to him and said, "You are doing a great job," because we went to one of his testing camps, and I wanted to appreciate him. So it was quite interesting. When my wife asked him, how can I thank you or something? He was quite cheeky. He said, "Oh, you can send me a few candies or Cadbury bars of chocolates or whatever it is." So he said, fine, laughed at it. And then I called him and I said, "Look, I really want to thank you." So I said, "Sure, I'll send you that." But I said, how old are you?" He mentioned his age. He was in his early 30s. I said, "Do you drink?" He said, "Yeah. Would you like to have a glass of wine or a bottle of wine or something?" He said, "No, no, I don't drink wine. I drink whiskey and something else or whatever it is." He said. I said, "Okay, fine." So I called him over. I bought whatever he mentioned, a bottle of whiskey and some other stuff. And he was quite surprised. He said, "No, no, I thought you were joking about it." And I said, "No, I wasn't joking. It's rare that I come across people like you." And then I discovered he was a volunteer. He was not even employed. He was a self-employed person. He was running a business, and he's spending pretty much, I think, during these days, much of his time in helping out other people. And there are what you might call the good Samaritans. And at the same time, there are other people who are probably, they've closed themselves. I do not really want to venture out, or maybe my health and whatever it is far more important, and not realizing this virus is no respecter of any of those kind of things, that even if you avoid everybody, you sort of sometimes get ill or whatever it is. So there's a lot of that learning that happens to us in terms of trying to figure out who is really moving up in that hierarchy of Maslow's in terms of needs, and some of them who are coming down. So if you put all this together so far in terms of going through like what we have talked about, how individually we have been impacted, how we have impacted other people, what have we learned about ourselves, what we have learned about other people. Uh, and like Gayatri says here, people who have much less are the kind of people who give much more. And it's not only true of now, but it's a pretty much a universal truth, actually. But in cases like this, I think it's far more pronounced. The more we have, we feel the more that we have to lose. And that creates a completely different mindset. So what I would like to leave you with is this thought, and it's not something that you might immediately be able to do. Just ask yourself this question, and I'm phrasing it very, very deliberately. Based on all these experiences, based on how you have experienced the last 1 year, you have experienced others, how others have experienced you, what you have learned about you, what you have learned about other people. What is it that you think is what the universe wishes you to be and do and have in the next year? Just think about it. I'm not asking you, what do you want to be? I'm asking you, what do you think that the universe would like you to be, to have, and to do in the next year. So that based on all your learnings, based on all your experiences, you can discover that better self of yourself and experience the better self of other people. If you can put down something as your thoughts, we can talk a little bit about it. But far more importantly, I just would like you to seriously think about this. We are all in the habit of making New Year resolutions, which we see that it doesn't even last for a day or a week. But if you were to go through this process that we have just now talked about very superficially, to be honest, go through your experiences the last year or even others much more deeply, empathize with yourself, build that relationship with your own inner self, and put down these thoughts, and then ask your question. And some of the people who I work with currently are here in my cohort. And this was a question that we started with almost 6 or 7 months ago. And many of them come back and tell me that it's something that is changing their lives. Not that it has changed their lives, but it's changing their lives. And perhaps you would experience it in a very similar way. So very quickly, Ujjaval, you have any thoughts about this?
Sure. Ram, I believe the year the next year universe wants me to be actually the instrument of universe. Okay, be a receiver, believe in synchronicity more, and try and give as much as you can.
So whatever you are saying now is to you the image of a better self that you would be. And this also, do you believe that it would help create better self of other people as well with whom you interact?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll leave this with you all. So in a broader framework that I just would like to talk about a bit of a philosophical underpinning of the conversation just we have had. There's a philosopher, his name is J. Krishnamurti, Jiddu Krishnamurti. Some of you may have heard of him, some of you may not have. He has been one of the most radical and original thinkers of the last century. And he was identified as a prophet in the mold of Jesus and so on, and was promoted as such. And after 10 years of that kind of a life, he stood up and said, I'm sorry, this is not what I want to be. And that speech Krishnamurti gave when he was just about 30 odd years old is called Truth is a Pathless Land. What he basically said was that truth, for it to survive, it can never be institutionalized. It has to be a pathless land. Pathless land in the sense that the moment you choose to walk somebody else's truth, it's no longer your truth. Every one of us in this universe, not just the humans, but every creature, has got its own truth. And that's part of the larger universal truth. And that is what in the Vedic philosophy we call as the dharma. When we talk about the dharma, it's not one golden rule that rules over everybody, and that is your ethical and moral conduct. It's about that each one of us, we have an imprint of the moral and ethical code, the meaning of life, the purpose of life that we walk. And how we walk is what in the Hindu philosophy is called the karma. What you do, what you think. And when these combine in terms of a purpose of life and a meaning of life, That is really where the confluence fulfills us, makes us happy, elevates it to the highest level of Peter Maslow's or the highest level of any psychological interpretation of the self or the fulfillment that we seek to have. So it has to be our own truth. It has to be our own congruence and our own authenticity. And experiences like what all of us have faced this year have a very funny way, in a way, of bringing out that truth in a much, much sharper focus to us. If only we choose to go back and revisit what we have experienced and why we have experienced what we have experienced, and what therefore are we learning from it? And in what way can that learning help us to be in that path of truth? That's our own unique truth. So many of you have, yes, Ujjaval, you can, if that is the Krishnamurti's link or whatever, yeah, you can share that, yeah. Like many of the expressions that we have put out here, they are similar. But then when you really deeply think about it, each one in our own personality, in our own DNA, we look at things differently. We respond differently, even though we may be doing it similarly. And we need to accept that. And we need to be grateful for that. And with that acceptance and gratitude, we can learn to become far more compassionate and loving to other people as well, and raise ourselves to be what the better self would be. And this is what I personally believe that coaches should be. And that's our métier. That's what our purpose of life is. Otherwise, we could be doing many other things. It's not about just earning money. It's not about coaching leaders. It's not about just developing leadership competencies. It's about discovering that inner truth about ourselves and helping other people to discover their inner truth as well, in terms of creating better selves of all of us. So I'll just stop here. I don't know if I'm going to do a preaching more, but if this conversation, if those of you would like to continue that, we could do it in the new year in different ways. In the meantime, Ujjaval, if you would like to close and put together whatever else there is. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So thanks, Ram, and thanks everyone for joining today. Ram, I reminded of one facilitated dialogue that we organized for coaches in the beginning of the pandemic, and I think that was quite useful. And I'm getting the same, feeling that it was more or less of a dialogue, but a chat-based dialogue. So thank you for being reflective, everyone. Thank you for expressing that you have shared. And I think I'm praying that the next year is going to be more generative and more appreciative for the humanity. Likewise, we also need to be more appreciative and more generative for the wonderful Mother Earth that is serving us.
Thanks, Ujjaval. And despite all the philosophy and everything else connected with that, I think if we were to follow the process of what we have done in this session, we would be certainly becoming far more skilled in our own coaching ourselves and other people. And as I said, you could integrate self-coaching with coaching other people and coach training as well, which is what we are hoping we are doing at this point in time. So wish you all an absolutely wonderful new year. And for those of you who celebrate, like whether we are Christians or not, we do as well, Christmas. Tremendously Merry Christmas, despite whatever is going on around us, and a wonderfully happy New Year to all of you. Thank you once again for being part of this session. Bye.
Sure.
Take care.
Bye, everyone. And Ram,
And as Magda said, all of you would be getting an email. All that you have to just click on it. And those of you who have stayed through, we will know, monitor that, and in future we can make that a standard. Don't worry about a password. The password is just Happy New Year, that's all. Just kidding.
Yes.
Bye. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, Ujjwal. Bye bye.
Most welcome, Ram.